Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're venturing deep into the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where the forests run dark and the shadows hold secrets as old as the land itself. From haunted hollows to spirits that still roam the ridges, get ready for 5 of the most disturbing true Appalachian horror stories that will make you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the trees. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's just the beginning and the terror waiting in the Appalachian darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting darker, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now, let's dive into the shadows of the Appalachians. The tree stands crooked and alone at the far end of Black Hollow, deep in the woods outside Harlan, Kentucky. It leans just slightly to the left, like it's listening to the wind, or maybe eavesdropping on your thoughts. The bark is rough and blackened, scarred by time and fire and things older than either. Half swallowed by the wood, barely visible unless you're looking for it, is a frayed length of rope, an old noose, crusted with age and half buried in the grain. The locals call it the witch tree. No one touches it. No one dares. They say it grew from the grave of a woman hanged for witchcraft sometime in the mid-1800s. Her name was Magnolia Bell. She was a healer, or at least she said she was. Midwife to some, poisoner to others. 100 rumors, none proven. All that's certain is that 3 children from the nearby settlement died suddenly. Fevers that came out of nowhere and boiled their little brains in hours. The townsfolk blamed her. They dragged her out of her home, tied her to a branch of a young tree, and let her hang until the sun came up. They buried her at the base of that same tree, right in the shallow dirt, and they left the noose hanging. No one wanted to touch it after that. By the time the tree was full grown, it looked wrong, gnarled, split open in the middle like something clawed its way out of it. There's a smell near it too, wet earth and old meat even in the dead of winter. Animals won't go near it. Birds avoid it. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, you can hear a creaking sound, like rope swinging from a branch. In 1987, 3 high school boys from Harlan, Tommy, Curtis, and Dale, took a dare. It was Halloween night, naturally. They'd been drinking cheap beer and talking big like boys do when they're trying not to be scared. One of them, Curtis I think, said something like, "Let's go get a piece of the witch tree, a branch. We'll bring it to school. Freak out Ms. Delaney." Everyone laughed. So off they went, flashlights and booze and that teenage sense of immortality. They hacked at the tree around midnight. Tommy had an axe. Curtis brought a hunting knife. Dale just stood back and laughed, chewing tobacco and spitting into the dirt. They said the bark bled when the axe hit it. Not sap, blood, thick and black and warm. Curtis went blind later that night. Just went blind. One minute he was fine, the next he was screaming that he couldn't see. His eyes were wide open, but completely white. Doctors never figured it out. They chalked it up to some kind of neurological episode, but that was just medical speak for, "We have no clue." Dale disappeared 2 days later. There was a thunderstorm, a big one, lightning splitting trees in half across the ridge. Dale left his house to get firewood and never came back. They found his boots in the mud, half a mile from Black Hollow, but not his body, not a bone, not a scrap of his jacket. Like the earth just swallowed him. Tommy survived, physically anyway. But something inside him broke. His parents found him 2 weeks later in the basement, rocking back and forth in front of the wood stove, muttering about her eyes and how the tree won't stop whispering. They committed him to the county asylum where he still lives. Doesn't talk much, but he draws. Over and over, he draws the same tree. Twisted, splintered, The noose always hangs from the same crooked limb. In every drawing, there's a face, in the bark. A woman's face, mouth open like she's screaming. The local kids still dare each other to go up there sometimes. Most never do. A few leave offerings instead. Dolls, animal bones, old pennies, bundles of hair. The old mountain people say the witch tree feeds on trespassers now. That it's hungry. That if you go up there with bad thoughts in your heart, it'll hear them. And if it likes the taste of your soul, it'll take you. Every Halloween, new claw marks appear on the trunk. Long ones, too high up to be made by any animal that should be walking those woods. And sometimes if you put your ear to the bark, they say you can hear breathing. Worse, they say it might whisper your name. The sheriff won't talk about the disappearances. Says it's all just stories, local superstition, nonsense that gets out of hand when people get bored. But if you ask around, you'll hear about hikers who vanished, campers who never came home, and a preacher who tried to cut the tree down and had a stroke in his sleep that very night. No one's touched it since. The rope is still there, half swallowed by the bark. Magnolia Bell's name is carved faintly into a stone at its base, overgrown with moss. Just a first name now. The rest is lost to time. They say the witch tree is growing again, and it leans more each year, always a little closer to town. There's a ridgeline in West Virginia that runs jagged like a broken spine through the Monongahela forest. The locals call it Devil's Backbone. Always have. Even the Cherokee had a name for it that roughly translates to the place where the air watches. Doesn't roll off the tongue like Smoky Mountains or Greenbrier Trail, but it gets the point across. It's a strange place. Wrong even, though that's hard to explain unless you've been there. The trees are too quiet, the fog hangs too low, birds don't sing, compass needles jitter. And once the sun goes down, the lights come. Not campfires, not headlamps or flashlights or anything that makes sense in the real world. No, these lights float. Lantern-sized orbs that glide between the trees like they've got minds of their own. Pale yellow, soft at first, then suddenly bright like they're pulsing, beckoning. That's the word old Everett Wallace used, beckoning, like they're trying to draw you in with gentle promises and sugar-coated lies. The locals know better. They don't hike the backbone after dark. They don't even look toward the ridge on certain nights. The old folks say the lights are spirits of moonshiners gunned down by revenuers during Prohibition. Others think it's older than that, something buried beneath the mountain. Something that uses the lights like bait on a hook. There have been stories for as long as anyone can remember. Hikers who vanish. Campers who wake up miles from their tents with no memory of walking. A pair of park rangers back in '77 who followed the lights and were found the next morning in a creek bed with their boots on the wrong feet and their tongues cut clean out. It gets passed around in whispers and campfire warnings, but it's all real, every word. In 2003, a woman named Erin McClary went missing on the ridge. She was a solo hiker from Ohio, 29, smart and experienced, kept a detailed journal of all her travels. She left a trailhead in Seneca Creek on a Monday morning and never checked into her scheduled campsite. When she didn't come back, by Wednesday, the search and rescue team was called in. 8 volunteers and 3 park officers combed the woods. They followed her trail easily at first. She was meticulous about leaving markers. But halfway up Devil's Backbone, those signs just stopped. No footprints, no bent branches, nothing. Like she'd been plucked off the trail by invisible hands. That night, the fog rolled in, thick and yellow like egg drop soup. The radios started failing, compasses spun. Then the lights appeared. A ranger named Mike Sutton was the first to spot them. 3 glowing orbs weaving slowly through the trees just ahead, like will-o'-the-wisps. He said they looked like lanterns from an old ghost movie. He called out, thinking maybe it was another rescue party. But there was no answer, just the sound of something big moving through the brush, something that didn't make noise with its feet, something that slid. Against orders, 2 volunteers followed the lights. They said they felt pulled, like their thoughts weren't entirely their own, like the lights whispered directly into their minds. When they came back, shaking, pale, crying, they said they'd found Erin. She was lying on her back at the edge of a ravine, face frozen in a silent scream. Her eyes were open wide, so wide it looked like the skin might split. Her lips were cracked. Her fingernails were torn, like she'd tried to claw her way back from whatever she saw. And whatever it was, it followed her to the end. Her compass was a twisted, melted chunk of plastic. Her GPS unit looked fine but wouldn't turn on. Her last journal entry was scrawled in shaky handwriting. "The lights are beautiful. I think they want me to follow." The coroner said there was no sign of trauma, no bite marks, no broken bones, just pure, unfiltered terror, like her heart gave out from fright. And here's the weirdest part. Her watch stopped at exactly 3:03 a.m., the same time 3 of the searchers said they heard whispering in the fog, though none of them could remember what was said. The incident report was buried. Official cause of death, exposure and dehydration. But you talk to the team who found her, and they'll tell you something different. Especially Mike Sutton. He retired 6 months later, said he couldn't be in the woods anymore, couldn't sleep right either. He kept seeing those lights in his dreams, getting closer and closer each night. Last anyone heard, he moved to Arizona, nowhere near any forests. Locals say the lights have gotten more active in the years since, brighter, more frequent. Some say the ridge is waking up. Whatever that means, the old-timers won't go near it, even in daylight. And they say if you see the lights and don't look away fast enough, it's already too late. The mountain doesn't forget. It watches, and it waits. People in Bluefield, Virginia don't talk much about Whitlow Mine number 3 anymore. Not the young ones. They barely know it ever existed. If they hear anything, it's just a mention at the end of some old-timer's bar story, usually slurred and wrapped in too much bourbon. But for the folks who were around back then, especially the miners and their families, it's a scar, an open one. One you don't scratch, not unless you want the old voices to come crawling back. You want the truth? The real reason they shut that mine down in 1998 had nothing to do with poor ventilation or outdated safety protocols or structural concerns. That's the official line, sure. But the ones who were down there, deep in the 3rd shaft, know better. They remember what came before the collapse. They remember her. They call her the woman under the mine, like she's part of the earth now, fused into the rock and dust. But the stories go back a lot farther than you'd think. Back to the early 1900s, before the mine even existed, when the mountain was just a ridge of dense hardwoods and old-growth pine. Folks said there was something wrong with that spot. Hunters avoided it. The dogs wouldn't go near it. Birds didn't even nest in the trees above it. They said it was cursed ground. When the mining company first broke the earth in 1919, there was a collapse not 2 weeks in. Killed 14 men. Most were recovered, but one woman, Emma Tolson, a coal sorter who worked above ground, disappeared, without a trace. She wasn't supposed to be in the shaft, but some claimed they saw her climbing down the side ladder, chasing after a runaway canary that had escaped its cage. No body was ever found. Her fiancé swore he heard her voice down there, screaming his name, echoing off the walls long after everyone else had been pulled out. Some folks think that's when it started. Years passed. The mine got deeper. The coal got blacker, richer. Men said it was almost oily down in the lower seams. The deeper they went, the stranger it got. Flashlights flickered even with fresh batteries. Compasses spun like tops. Gas sensors chirped and shrieked when there was nothing there. But the men kept going, because that's what miners do. You don't question the dark. You work in it. Then came the first real encounter. It was 1982 when a man named Calvin Braxton came screaming out of the elevator cage after his midnight shift. He was wild-eyed, swinging a pickaxe at shadows. Took 3 men to pin him down. All he kept saying was, she asked me, over and over, will you take my place?" They locked him up at Ridge Hollow Sanitarium. He never spoke again. Just scratched the same words into the walls with his fingernails until the day he died. The mine tried to cover it up, of course, claimed he was hallucinating from methane exposure, but it didn't stop there. In the years that followed, more sightings occurred, always the same. A pale woman standing at the edge of the darkness, barefoot, wearing a white shift that somehow stayed clean in the filth. Her face stayed mostly hidden by her long, wet hair. But her mouth was wrong, too wide. When she spoke, her voice was like stone dragging across stone. "Will you take my place?" Some said she moved closer each time, inch by inch, and if you answered, even with a laugh or a curse, she'd vanish, and you'd start hearing her voice everywhere, in the vents, in the drip of water, in your dreams. Men started quitting. Hard-seasoned miners with decades of experience just walked off the job and never came back, but others didn't get the chance. Between 1985 and 1997, 11 men vanished inside that mine. No cave-ins, no wreckage. Their helmets and belts were found just outside the deepest shaft, as if they took them off before going in, as if they chose to go down there. One miner, Jonah Ellis, left a note for his wife on the back of a cigarette carton. "She's calling me again. I think this time I'll answer." He was never found. In 1998, the mine suffered its final collapse. 7 men went down for a late-night inspection shift. Only one came back, barely. His name was Darren Clem, 29 years old, father of 2. When they pulled him up from the wreckage, he wasn't injured, not a scratch on him. But he was. Blind, pupils blown wide, eyes milky white, and he was muttering. They were all looking at her, all of them, smiling while she screamed. But she wasn't the one screaming. They asked him what he meant. He just kept repeating the same phrase. "She's under us now, in the stone, in the seams. She's waiting." Whitlow Mine number 3 was shut down for good. Sealed, welded, buried under concrete and rock. The mining company put out a press release, made some quiet payouts. Most of the old records were scrubbed or lost in transition, but the locals know better. They say the ground still knocks. Not all the time, just when the mountain's quiet, when the wind dies and the birds go still. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. They say she's still down there, buried but not dead. Not really. That she's part of the mine now, part of the deal. Because something took her in 1919 and now it wants a trade. Always a trade. Every once in a while some idiot teenager dares another to go near the site. Most turn back before getting close. But one year, Halloween night, 2007, a kid named Brandon Fields snuck past the fence and tapped on the concrete seal. Just 3 knocks, like a joke. They never found him, but his phone was recovered the next day, just lying on the gravel. One photo was taken, blurry but clear enough. It showed a woman in a white shift, crouched low on the concrete, smiling with a mouth too wide, her black eyes staring straight into the camera. His mother still gets voicemails from his number. They're silent, except for the sound of knocking. The Appalachian woods have long memories. They remember who cut them down, who bled in them, who whispered secrets into the bark of trees older than the country itself. Elkmont, Tennessee is one of those places that the mountains never quite forgave. A ghost town now, hidden deep in the folds of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, it was once a thriving logging village at the turn of the 20th century. Then, like so many others, it dried up. The saws went quiet, the trains stopped running, and the trees slowly took back what was stolen. But one house, one, remained angry. The locals call it the Screaming House. It squats at the far end of an overgrown trail behind the remnants of the old Appalachian Club, barely visible through curtains of moss and rot. It doesn't look special, not at first glance, just another crumbling cabin in the woods. 2 stories of warped timber, a sagging roof, windows long since boarded up like the house was ashamed of what it had seen. But there's something wrong about it, the kind of wrong you feel in your gut before your brain can explain it. A sour hum in the air, a cold spot in the sunlight. a pressure in your ears, like something's whispering just below hearing. The first stories came from hikers and campers. They'd wander too close after sunset and hear it, wailing, not the mournful wind through the cracks kind of sound, no. This was screaming, human, desperate, screams that bled into begging that turned to sobbing. Sometimes you'd hear a voice, always the same phrase, like a broken recording. "He's in the walls! Please! He's in the walls!" People laughed it off at first, said it was a prank, a mountain echo, maybe just a bobcat or fox making weird noises in the night. But folks who got too close started having strange dreams. One woman, a backpacker from Ohio, said she saw a man with no skin crawling along the ceiling beams in her dreams for weeks after visiting, said he whispered her name even though she never told a soul she went near that house. Still, the Park Service left the place alone, too remote to tear down, too creepy to turn into a tourist spot. They locked the trail gate and called it a day, until 2009. That summer, a seasonal worker named Kyle Massey took a short camping trip into the backwoods near Elkmont. 22, just out of college, working the front desk at the Sugarlands Visitor Center. He was the kind of guy who didn't scare easy, laughed at ghost stories, thought the old legends were BS for tourists. He never came back. They found his tent 3 days later, slashed wide open like something had ripped its way out. Not cut, ripped. His pack and gear were untouched. There was no blood, no tracks, no sign of an animal. But they found his phone, wedged between the roots of a tree just a few yards from the screaming house. It was dead, but the SD card survived. The last recorded audio file was 34 seconds long. It's never been released publicly, but I've talked to someone who heard it. An ex-ranger who quit the job less than a year after that case. He told me the recording starts with static, then the sound of Kyle's breathing. He's whispering into the mic. Okay, I'm near the house. I don't see anything, but I keep hearing it. Something's in the walls, like it's crawling, scratching. It said my name. I swear to God it said my name. Then there's silence. Not dead silence, listening silence. Like the world holding its breath. And then a man's voice, distant but urgent. Don't go in that house. It knows your name. It already knows. The file ends in a high, sharp burst of static and what might be screaming, but it's too distorted to tell if it's from Kyle or something else. That was enough for the Rangers. They sealed the trail permanently. No more maintenance. No more patrols. The house and the forest around it were quietly erased from the tourist maps. Officially, it's off-limits due to unsafe terrain. Unofficially, they don't go there, not anymore. But the house is still there, and people still hear it. Hikers camping on nearby trails sometimes report waking to distant wailing, long and sharp, cutting through the night air like a knife through canvas. A few even claimed they heard their own names whispered from the trees. One man left his camp behind in the middle of the night, ran all the way down the trail barefoot, bleeding from both feet. When they found him the next morning, shivering under a ranger tower, he just kept repeating, "It's awake now. We shouldn't have left it alone. It remembers everything." Some say the screaming house was built on cursed land, that it wasn't the trees or time that made Elkmont die, but the thing inside that house, that something was buried in the foundation, a person maybe, or maybe something that used to be a person, something that never wanted to be forgotten. Whatever's in there, it doesn't scream for fun. It's calling for help, or worse, for company. And if you hear it, if you get too close and you hear your name in the dark, don't answer. Hazard, Kentucky. Coal country, God's afterthought, a place where the dirt is black and the air carries ghosts. It's a town that's always felt too close to the edge of something. Not quite hell, not quite Appalachia, but somewhere in between. Folks there don't scare easy, not after you've spent years sweating in the belly of the earth, swinging picks and praying the ceiling doesn't come down on your head. But there's one story even the oldest miners won't tell unless they've had a drink or three. And even then, their voices drop and their hands start to shake. They call him the man in the mine fog. It starts right after the morning dynamite goes off. You know the sound. The thundercrack that shakes the bones of the mountains and the teeth in your skull. Right after that blast, the dust clouds and damp air mix into a fog that rolls through the shafts like it's alive. The temperature drops. The lights flicker. Sometimes you can't see your own hand in front of your face. That's when he comes. Tall, thin as a scarecrow and twice as wrong, wearing an old miner's coat that hangs like a funeral shroud. His face is always hidden beneath a black veil that moves like it's underwater, even when the air is still. His boots don't make a sound. And his hands? They drip with something. Not water, not sweat, but rust. Orange and flaky and wet, like his fingers had been soaking in blood and iron for a century. They say he walks the same path every time, like he's retracing some old bitter memory. Never hurrying, never stopping. He doesn't speak, doesn't breathe. He just walks, unless someone talks to him. Back in 1992, there was this greenhorn fresh out of Pikeville named Trevor Adkins. Big kid, mouthy. Thought the stories were bull. The older guys warned him, "When the fog comes, shut up and look at your boots." But Trevor was the type that needed to learn the hard way. That morning, the blast went off and the fog came in like a flood. The radios buzzed and died. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in under a minute. And then, from out of the mist, the shape appeared. Taller than any man had a right to be, arms swinging slow like a pendulum in church. Trevor saw him and laughed. "Hey!" he shouted. "Hey, who the hell are you? You're not supposed to be down here." The man stopped. That was the first and only time anyone ever saw him change direction. He turned, slow like his joints were made of glass, and faced Trevor. The veil lifted just an inch. No one else saw what was under it. Only Trevor. They say he didn't scream, didn't speak, just dropped to his knees, clutching his face like it was on fire. He was still breathing when they hauled him topside, but his eyes were gone. Not gouged out, not burned, just gone. As if whatever he saw reached in and pulled the sight from his skull like a worm from the dirt. He spent the rest of his life in a home outside Lexington. He never said a word again, just sat there, rocking slowly, tapping out a rhythm on the arms of his chair. 5 slow knocks, 2 quick. Over and over, the old-timers said that's the sound the fogman's boots made on the tunnel floor. After that, the warnings turned into rules. When the fog comes, you shut your mouth. You turn off your headlamp. You stand still. And whatever you do, you don't look back. Because it's not just about not talking to him. He knows when you're thinking about him. When your brain starts screaming questions your mouth is too smart to say. That's when he turns. That's when the veil lifts. And if he shows you his face, you're done. Some believe he's the ghost of a miner who got sealed inside during a collapse in 1913. Others say he's not a man at all, that he was never human, that he's something older, something the mountains kept buried until men got greedy and blasted too deep. One retired foreman swore up and down that the mine maps changed after every encounter with the fogman. Tunnels that used to be there, gone. New shafts appearing where there shouldn't be rock, like the mountain itself was shifting, trying to confuse people. Trap them, like it was protecting something. There's even a story about a whole shift of workers in 1977 who vanished. 7 men, all experienced, all deep in the shaft during a fog event. Their gear was found stacked neatly in the break room, boots polished, lunchboxes full. But the men were gone. No bodies, no tracks, nothing. Just a single black veil, nailed to the center post of the shaft, fluttering in a breeze that wasn't there. Now, when a new hire shows up in Hazard, they're taken aside and told the truth, plain and ugly. The fog ain't natural. The man in it ain't either. Keep your eyes down, your lips shut, and if your lamp flickers 3 times, start praying. And to this day, sometimes, just before dawn, you can see it. The mist creeping in like cold fingers, the silence folding over the tunnels. And that shape. Walking slow, walking steady, with red dripping hands and a face you never want to see. Whatever he is, he's still down there, and he's waiting for the next fool who doesn't know when to shut up.